Welcome, weary wanderer, to the hidden valley of Gravity Falls, where ancient mysteries slumber beneath towering pines, and summer holds secrets that most dare not dream. Tonight we explore the complete history of the Mystery Shack, that curious tourist trap where wonder masquerades as hokum and genuine magic hides behind carnival tricks. From its origins as a humble research cabin to its transformation into the epicenter of cosmic adventure, this is a tale of twin brothers, impossible discoveries, and the thin line between science and supernatural. Close your eyes and let yourself drift as we uncover every secret this remarkable place has ever held. In the beginning, long before human footsteps first disturbed the ancient silence of the Pacific Northwest forests, the land that would one day cradle the Mystery Shack pulsed with energies that existed outside the normal flow of time and space. The indigenous peoples who first walked these verdant paths understood what later settlers would spend generations trying to ignore or explain away: that this valley existed as a convergence point where the boundaries between worlds grew thin as morning mist and twice as ephemeral. The tribal shamans and medicine workers of the region recognized the signs that marked this place as sacred and dangerous in equal measure. Trees grew in patterns that seemed random to casual observers, but formed intricate geometric designs when viewed from the elevated perspectives that only the spirit world could provide. Springs bubbled up from underground sources that tapped into chambers filled with crystalline formations older than human memory, their waters carrying mineral compositions that existed nowhere else on Earth, and nowhere else in dimensions that bordered their own. These first human inhabitants of what would eventually become Gravity Falls developed elaborate ceremonies and protective rituals designed not to banish the supernatural forces that congregated in their homeland, but to maintain the delicate balance that allowed human and otherworldly existences to coexist without catastrophic interference. They understood, with wisdom that would be lost to future generations, that the strange energies flowing through their valley were neither inherently benevolent nor malevolent, but simply powerful beyond human comprehension. The shamans passed down through oral tradition the knowledge that certain locations within the forest served as natural focal points for dimensional activity, places where entities from other realms of existence could more easily manifest in the physical world. They established sacred sites at these convergence points, creating stone circles and wooden totems that served dual purposes as both spiritual gathering places and early warning systems for supernatural activity that might threaten the fragile equilibrium between worlds. The ceremonial calendar that governed tribal life in the valley was synchronized not only with the natural cycles of seasons and celestial movements, but also with the ebb and flow of supernatural energy that followed patterns too complex for casual observation to detect. During certain astronomical alignments, when the barriers between dimensions became particularly permeable, the shamans would perform elaborate rituals designed to strengthen the protective barriers that kept malevolent entities from gaining permanent foothold in the physical realm. These ancient ceremonies often involved the creation of physical artifacts imbued with protective properties, objects that would continue to exert their influence long after their creators had passed into legend. Carved stones and woven textiles, ceremonial masks, and ritual implements were placed at strategic locations throughout the valley, creating a network of supernatural early warning systems and defensive measures that operated according to principles that European science would not begin to understand for centuries. The indigenous understanding of the supernatural ecosystem that flourished in the Gravity Falls region was holistic and sophisticated, recognizing that the various cryptids, spirits, and dimensional anomalies that called the valley home were all part of a complex web of interactions that had been developing for millennia. Rather than attempting to categorize these phenomena according to human frameworks of understanding, the tribal wisdom keepers learned to work within the existing supernatural community structure, establishing protocols for interaction that minimized conflict while maximizing mutual benefit. The arrival of European explorers and settlers in the 18th and 19th centuries marked the beginning of a dramatic transformation in how humans related to the supernatural aspects of the Gravity Falls region. These newcomers, shaped by worldviews that placed humanity at the center of creation and viewed the natural world primarily as a resource to be exploited, had neither the cultural framework nor the spiritual preparation necessary to understand what they were encountering in the deep places of the forest. The early pioneers who established permanent settlements in the valley approached the strange phenomena they witnessed with a mixture of denial, rationalization, and carefully maintained ignorance. When livestock disappeared under circumstances that suggested predators far larger and more intelligent than any known species, the settlers blamed wolves or bears, despite evidence that pointed to creatures that walked upright and possessed opposable thumbs. When geometric patterns appeared overnight in cleared fields, forming symbols that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle from which they were viewed, practical farmers attributed them to wind patterns or unusual frost formations. The town that gradually coalesced around the most defensible and fertile areas of the valley reflected this determined normality in its architecture and social structures. Buildings were constructed with unusually thick walls and doors that featured multiple layers of locks, ostensibly as protection against conventional threats like bandits or wild animals. Churches were built with foundations that extended far deeper underground than structural necessity would require, their basements serving as community gathering places during periods when staying indoors seemed particularly advisable. The establishment of Gravity Falls as an official municipality in the mid-19th century represented both an attempt to impose rational, governmental order on a fundamentally irrational environment, and an acknowledgement that the valley's unique characteristics required specialized approaches to law enforcement and civil administration. The town's founding documents, written by pragmatic men who had learned to navigate the gap between public skepticism and private knowledge, contained unusual provisions for dealing with unexplained phenomena and established protocols for maintaining community safety during events that could not be easily explained to outside authorities. The geological surveys conducted during the town's early years revealed mineral compositions and underground formations that challenged existing scientific understanding of how such structures could form under natural conditions. The surveyors discovered cave systems that seemed to extend far deeper into the earth than the local topography should have allowed, their passages following routes that suggested artificial construction, despite showing no evidence of tool marks or human intervention. The magnetic properties of the region proved equally puzzling to scientists equipped with the instrumentation of their era. Compass readings varied wildly depending on location and time of day, following patterns that seemed to correlate with celestial movements but in ways that existing theories of magnetism could not adequately explain. The aurora-like lights that occasionally illuminated the night sky above the valley appeared with a frequency and intensity that had no precedent in recorded observations from similar latitudes. By the early 20th century, Gravity Falls had established itself as a community that had learned to function despite, or perhaps because of its unique relationship with forces that operated outside the boundaries of conventional understanding. The residents developed an almost supernatural ability to normalize the abnormal, creating elaborate networks of unofficial communication that allowed information about unusual events to circulate quickly through the community while maintaining an official silence that protected both individual privacy and collective security. The children who grew up in this environment learned from an early age to recognize the signs that indicated when supernatural activity was increasing, developing intuitive understanding of which areas of the forest were safe for exploration and which should be avoided entirely. Adults created informal support systems that provided assistance to families who had experienced supernatural encounters, offering practical help with everything from property damage to emotional trauma, while maintaining the careful fiction that nothing out of the ordinary had actually occurred. The arrival of telegraph and telephone service in the early 1900s created new challenges for a community that had grown accustomed to managing its secrets through personal relationships and face-to-face communication. The residents of Gravity Falls became pioneers in the subtle art of incomplete disclosure, learning to craft reports to outside authorities that were technically accurate, while omitting the details that would have resulted in unwanted attention from investigators who lacked the cultural preparation necessary to understand what they would encounter. The town's relationship with federal and state authorities evolved into a delicate balance of cooperation and misdirection, with local officials becoming skilled at providing exactly the amount of information necessary to satisfy bureaucratic requirements, without revealing the full extent of the supernatural activity that characterized daily life in the valley. This careful management of external relationships would prove crucial in later decades when the level of supernatural activity in the region began to increase dramatically. The economic development of Gravity Falls during the early 20th century reflected the community's need to balance the practical requirements of modern life with the ongoing necessity of maintaining protective secrecy about the valley's unique characteristics. The timber industry provided legitimate employment opportunities while also serving as convenient cover for the specialized knowledge that residents developed about which areas of the forest were safe for commercial exploitation and which should be left undisturbed for reasons that could not be easily explained to outside supervisors. The tourism industry that began to develop around the valley's natural beauty created new opportunities and challenges for residents who understood that their home's most remarkable attractions were precisely the features that could never be openly displayed to casual visitors. The development of carefully managed tourist activities required unprecedented levels of coordination between community members who needed to ensure that visitors experienced enough of the valley's unusual character to generate positive word-of-mouth advertising while avoiding encounters that might result in public attention from less sympathetic sources. It was into this carefully balanced environment of controlled mystery and managed revelation that Stanford Pines would eventually arrive, bringing with him the combination of academic credentials, financial resources, and scientific curiosity that would transform the supernatural landscape of Gravity Falls in ways that even the most far-sighted community elders could never have anticipated. The site where the Mystery Shack would eventually stand had already established itself as a location of particular supernatural significance long before any human structure occupied the clearing. The indigenous shamans had identified it as one of the primary convergence points in their network of dimensional monitoring stations, and the protective totems they had placed there continued to exert their influence even after the original ceremonies that had created them had been forgotten by subsequent generations. The geological surveys of the area revealed underground formations that suggested the presence of vast hollow spaces beneath the forest floor, caverns and passages that seemed to extend in directions that three-dimensional mapping techniques could not adequately represent. These subsurface anomalies would prove crucial to understanding why this particular location had become such a focal point for supernatural activity, though their full significance would not become apparent until Stanford Pines began his systematic investigation of the valley's hidden dimensions. The natural supernatural ecosystem that had developed around the future site of the Mystery Shack represented the culmination of thousands of years of evolution and adaptation as various cryptids and dimensional entities learned to coexist within the unique energy environment that characterized the Gravity Falls region. The creatures that inhabited these woods had developed behavioral patterns and physiological adaptations that allowed them to thrive in conditions where the normal laws of physics operated according to more flexible principles than elsewhere in the known universe. The cyclical nature of supernatural activity in the valley followed patterns that correlated with astronomical events operating on timescales that spanned decades and centuries, creating periods of relative calm interspersed with episodes of intense dimensional instability that tested the preparedness and wisdom of each generation of human inhabitants. The ancient warnings and prophecies that had been passed down through indigenous oral traditions spoke of times when the barriers between worlds would weaken to the point where entities of vast power and questionable intention might attempt to establish permanent residence in the physical realm. These prophecies, encoded in ceremonial songs and ritual performances that preserved their essential information while obscuring their specific details from casual observers, contained remarkably accurate predictions about the kinds of cosmic threats that the valley would eventually face. The shamans who had crafted these warnings understood that knowledge of future dangers would be most effective when transmitted in forms that could survive the cultural disruptions and generational changes that time would inevitably bring to their homeland. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, the ancient protections and warnings that had been woven into the very fabric of Gravity Falls began to interact with the new forms of human knowledge and technology that were transforming the world beyond the valley's borders. The stage was being set for encounters between traditional wisdom and modern science that would ultimately reshape not only the understanding of supernatural phenomena, but the fundamental nature of reality itself within the boundaries of this remarkable and dangerous place. The autumn of 1975 brought to Gravity Falls a visitor unlike any the valley had welcomed in generations. A man whose arrival would fundamentally alter the delicate balance between the seen and unseen worlds that the community had spent over a century learning to maintain. Stanford Philbrick Pines descended from the Greyhound bus that deposited him at the town's modest terminal, with the confident stride of someone accustomed to academic success, his multiple degrees and impressive research credentials preceding him like invisible banners, announcing his intention to unlock secrets that others had spent lifetimes learning to leave undisturbed. Stanford's journey to this remote corner of the Pacific Northwest had begun years earlier in the hallowed halls of West Coast Technical College, where his exceptional intellect and insatiable curiosity had earned him recognition as one of the most promising young researchers of his generation. His doctoral dissertation on theoretical physics had explored mathematical models for describing dimensional relationships that extended beyond the conventional understanding of three-dimensional space, work that had attracted the attention of grant committees willing to fund unconventional research into phenomena that mainstream science preferred to ignore. The academic establishment had taken notice of Stanford's unique combination of rigorous methodology and willingness to investigate subjects that more cautious researchers avoided, recognizing in him the rare scholar who possessed both the intellectual tools necessary for serious scientific inquiry and the imaginative flexibility required to adapt those tools to circumstances that conventional wisdom insisted could not exist. His published papers on magnetic anomalies and geological irregularities had established him as an expert in the kinds of phenomena that government agencies and private foundations were quietly interested in understanding better. The funding that brought Stanford to Gravity Falls had been assembled from multiple sources, each organization apparently interested in different aspects of the research he proposed to conduct, but none fully aware of the comprehensive scope of investigation he intended to pursue. The National Science Foundation had provided support for his stated goal of documenting unusual mineral formations in the region, while a more secretive government agency had contributed additional resources based on their interest in the magnetic anomalies that previous surveys had detected but never adequately explained. Stanford's choice of Gravity Falls as his research destination had been guided by more than just the academic literature that documented the valley's unusual characteristics. During his graduate studies, he had encountered references to the region in sources that existed at the margins of respectable scholarship, mentions in journals and proceedings that serious academics rarely cited, but that suggested the presence of phenomena that could provide unprecedented opportunities for advancing human understanding of the fundamental nature of reality itself. The initial establishment of Stanford's research station represented a masterwork of careful planning and diplomatic navigation, as he negotiated the complex social dynamics of a community that had grown suspicious of outsiders who showed too much interest in the valley's more unusual aspects. The residents of Gravity Falls had developed finely tuned instincts for distinguishing between casual visitors who posed no threat to their carefully maintained secrets, and researchers whose investigations might expose the community to unwanted attention from authorities who lacked the wisdom to handle such knowledge responsibly. Stanford's approach to gaining the trust of the local population demonstrated the same methodical intelligence that characterized his academic work, as he invested considerable time and effort in understanding the unwritten rules that governed social interaction in Gravity Falls. He attended community events with genuine interest, rather than condescending curiosity, contributed to local charitable causes without making a show of his generosity, and gradually established himself as someone who could be trusted with partial knowledge while he proved his worthiness to receive deeper revelations. The site that Stanford eventually selected for his research cabin had been chosen through a combination of scientific analysis and consultation with local residents who understood the supernatural geography of the region far better than any geological survey could reveal. The location offered practical advantages in terms of accessibility and proximity to the phenomena he intended to study, but more importantly, it occupied a position within the valley's network of supernatural activity that would allow him to observe and document events without inadvertently triggering the kinds of dimensional disturbances that could threaten both his research and the safety of the surrounding community. The construction of Stanford's research facility proceeded according to plans that reflected both conventional building practices and specialized requirements that arose from the unique nature of his intended investigations. The cabin's foundation was designed to accommodate the installation of sensitive scientific equipment, while also incorporating traditional protective elements that local craftsmen insisted were necessary for any structure built in areas where supernatural activity was known to occur with unusual frequency. The basement that Stanford excavated beneath his cabin extended far deeper than conventional construction would require, creating space for equipment, storage, and experimental work that needed to be conducted away from casual observation. The precision with which these underground chambers were constructed, following specifications that Stanford developed through careful study of both engineering principles and more esoteric sources of knowledge, would prove crucial when later phases of his research required facilities that could contain and channel energies that operated according to principles unknown to conventional physics. Stanford's first documented encounter with the supernatural ecology of Gravity Falls occurred within weeks of completing his research station, when his sensitive magnetic detection equipment began registering readings that suggested the presence of organized intelligence behind phenomena that previous researchers had dismissed as random geological activity. The patterns that emerged from his continuous monitoring indicated purposeful movement and communication, occurring in frequencies and dimensions that conventional instrumentation could detect but not interpret. The methodical expansion of Stanford's research activities during his first year in Gravity Falls established patterns of investigation that would define his work for the next decade, as he developed increasingly sophisticated techniques for studying phenomena that existed at the intersection of multiple scientific disciplines while operating according to principles that no single academic framework could adequately encompass. His daily routine evolved to accommodate both the requirements of rigorous scientific documentation and the practical necessities of living in an environment where the unexpected had become so routine that residents barely commented on events that would have caused sensation in any other community. The journals that Stanford began keeping during this period represented a revolutionary approach to documenting supernatural phenomena, combining the precise observational techniques of experimental science with the comprehensive scope of naturalistic field study. Each entry recorded not only the specific details of individual encounters, but also the broader patterns of environmental and celestial conditions that seemed to correlate with increased levels of supernatural activity, creating a database of information that revealed underlying structures and relationships that had previously remained hidden. Stanford's growing network of local contacts provided him with access to knowledge that had been accumulated over generations of careful observation, as longtime residents gradually shared their understanding of which locations within the valley were safe for investigation and which should be approached only under specific conditions or avoided entirely. This collaboration between academic methodology and traditional wisdom produced insights that neither approach could have achieved independently, bridging the gap between scientific analysis and experiential knowledge in ways that enhanced both perspectives. The seasonal rhythms that governed supernatural activity in Gravity Falls became increasingly apparent as Stanford's research extended across multiple annual cycles, revealing patterns that operated on timescales longer than any individual researcher could observe without the benefit of carefully preserved records and oral traditions passed down through multiple generations. The autumn months, when dimensional barriers seemed to weaken in correlation with celestial events that occurred according to astronomical cycles spanning decades, provided opportunities for observations that were impossible during other periods of the year. Stanford's encounters with the valley's cryptid population during this early period of his research established precedents for interaction that would influence all his subsequent work, as he learned to navigate the complex social dynamics that governed relationships between human researchers and entities whose intelligence and motivations operated according to principles that defied easy categorization. The creatures he encountered displayed behavioral patterns that suggested not only individual consciousness but also participation in community structures that had been developing for far longer than human civilization had existed in the region. The development of Stanford's communication protocols with various supernatural entities represented one of his most significant early achievements, as he gradually learned to establish meaningful dialogue with beings whose modes of thought and expression existed outside the normal parameters of human language and culture. These interactions provided him with insights into the deeper structures that governed supernatural activity in the valley, revealing the existence of complex relationships and territorial arrangements that had been maintaining relative stability for centuries. Stanford's documentation of these early encounters filled multiple journals with observations that read like a combination of rigorous field notes and the diary of an explorer venturing into territories that existed beyond the mapped boundaries of known reality. Each successful communication with a supernatural entity provided new information about the broader ecosystem of which they were part, gradually building a comprehensive picture of how the various cryptids, spirits, and dimensional anomalies that inhabited the region related to each other and to the human community that shared their homeland. The transformation of Stanford's research cabin into what local residents began referring to as the Mystery Shack occurred gradually, as his need for funding to support increasingly expensive investigations led him to explore various methods of generating income without compromising the secrecy that his work required. The tourist trade that brought visitors to the valley's natural attractions provided an obvious opportunity, but capitalizing on this resource required careful balance between revealing enough genuine mystery to satisfy customer expectations, while concealing the kinds of information that could attract unwanted attention from less sympathetic investigators. Stanford's initial attempts at creating tourist attractions based on his research findings demonstrated the same methodical approach that characterized his scientific work, as he experimented with different presentation techniques and audience management strategies to determine which approaches could generate revenue without exposing either himself or the community to unnecessary risks. The exhibits he developed during this period combined genuine supernatural artifacts with carefully crafted replicas, creating displays that provided visitors with authentic encounters with the mysterious, while maintaining plausible deniability about the true nature of what they were experiencing. The evolution of Stanford's public persona during this period reflected his growing understanding of how to navigate the complex relationships between scientific truth, commercial necessity, and community safety that defined life in Gravity Falls. The character he developed for his interactions with tourists drew upon his genuine expertise and enthusiasm, while carefully controlling the amount and type of information he shared, creating an experience that satisfied visitors' desire for mystery, while protecting the deeper secrets that required more sophisticated understanding to handle safely. The success of Stanford's tourist operation created new challenges, as word of the Mystery Shack's unique attractions began to spread beyond the immediate region, drawing visitors from increasingly distant locations who arrived with expectations shaped by stories and rumors that often bore little resemblance to the carefully managed reality that Stanford had constructed. Managing these expectations required continuous adaptation of his presentation techniques and the development of new exhibits that could provide satisfying experiences for audiences with widely varying levels of knowledge, sophistication. The financial resources that Stanford's tourist operation generated allowed him to expand his research activities in directions that had previously been limited by budgetary constraints, providing funding for increasingly sophisticated equipment and enabling him to pursue investigations that required significant material investments. The independence that came with self-funding also freed him from the reporting requirements and oversight mechanisms that had constrained his earlier work, allowing him to follow research leads wherever they might take him without concern for satisfying the expectations of grant committees or institutional supervisors. Stanford's deepening integration into the social fabric of Gravity Falls during this period provided him with access to knowledge and resources that had been accumulating in the community for generations, as longtime residents gradually accepted him as someone who could be trusted with increasingly sensitive information about the valley's hidden nature. This acceptance opened doors to archives of local folklore, family traditions, and private collections of artifacts that had been preserved by families whose ancestors had been among the region's earliest settlers. The The collaboration that developed between Stanford and various community members created a research network that combined academic methodology with practical experience in ways that enhanced both approaches to understanding supernatural phenomena. Local residents provided guidance about safe investigation techniques, while Stanford contributed theoretical frameworks and analytical tools that helped reveal underlying patterns and relationships that experiential knowledge alone could not fully illuminate. As Stanford's first decade in Gravity Falls drew to a close, his research had established him as the foremost expert on the supernatural ecology of the region, while his tourist operation had created a sustainable model for funding continued investigation without compromising community safety or scientific integrity. The foundation he had built during these years would prove crucial for supporting the more ambitious and dangerous research projects that lay ahead, investigations that would ultimately challenge not only his understanding of supernatural phenomena, but the fundamental assumptions about reality itself that had guided all his previous work. The mystery shack that emerged from this period of development represented something unique in the annals of both tourism and research, a facility that served multiple functions simultaneously while maintaining careful separation between its various roles and audiences. The public face that visitors encountered provided genuine entertainment and education, while the hidden aspects of the operation supported scientific work that was advancing human understanding of phenomena that most people preferred to believe could not exist. Stanford's achievement in creating this dual-purpose facility demonstrated the same intellectual flexibility and creative problem-solving ability that had characterized his academic career, proving that rigorous scientific investigation and commercial success could coexist when properly managed by someone with both the knowledge necessary to understand what he was dealing with and the wisdom necessary to handle such knowledge responsibly. The stage was now set for the next phase of his research, investigations that would take him into territories where even his carefully developed methods and hard-won local knowledge would prove insufficient to protect him from dangers that operated according to principles that transcended all previous human experience. The darkness that would ultimately consume Stanford Pines began not with malevolent intention, but with the most human of motivations: the desire for knowledge that transcended the boundaries of conventional understanding and the promise of discoveries that could revolutionize humanity's comprehension of its place within the vast cosmic order. In the winter of 1982, as Stanford's research into the supernatural ecology of Gravity Falls had reached new heights of sophistication and depth, his dreams began to carry visitors whose origins lay far beyond the dimensional barriers that separated his familiar world from realms of existence that operated according to principles that no earthly science could adequately describe. The entity that first made contact with Stanford through the malleable landscape of his sleeping mind presented itself with a combination of charm and intellectual sophistication that proved irresistible to a researcher who had spent years documenting phenomena that existed at the very limits of human comprehension. Bill Cipher appeared in Stanford's dreams as a being of pure geometric elegance, a triangular form wreathed in golden light, whose very presence seemed to radiate knowledge and power that dwarfed anything Stanford had encountered during his terrestrial investigations. Bill's initial approach to Stanford demonstrated a masterful understanding of human psychology and academic motivation, as the Dream Demon crafted his presentations to appeal specifically to the intellectual pride and scientific curiosity that had driven Stanford's career since his earliest days as a graduate student. Rather than offering crude temptations of wealth or power, Bill presented himself as a fellow seeker of truth whose existence in higher dimensions provided him with perspectives and capabilities that could advance Stanford's research in ways that purely terrestrial methods could never achieve. The seduction that Bill orchestrated unfolded across multiple dream encounters, each contact building upon the previous session to create an increasingly intimate collaboration between human researcher and cosmic entity. Bill's knowledge of dimensional theory and supernatural phenomena far exceeded anything Stanford had encountered in his academic studies or field research, providing explanations for observations that had previously defied interpretation and offering theoretical frameworks that could unite Stanford's disparate findings into a coherent understanding of how reality operated at its most fundamental levels. Stanford's initial skepticism about the reality of his dream encounters gradually dissolved as Bill provided him with information and insights that proved accurate when tested against his waking investigations, demonstrating knowledge of Gravity Falls' supernatural ecology that surpassed even Stanford's own extensive research. The mathematical principles and theoretical constructs that Bill shared during their nocturnal meetings enabled Stanford to make breakthrough discoveries in his terrestrial work, solving problems that had frustrated his efforts for months, and opening new avenues of investigation that promised to revolutionize his understanding of dimensional relationships. The collaboration that developed between Stanford and Bill during this period represented the fulfillment of every academic researcher's deepest fantasies about the possibilities that might emerge from contact with truly superior intelligence. Bill's ability to perceive reality from perspectives that transcended three-dimensional limitations provided Stanford with insights that no earthly mentor could have offered, while his knowledge of advanced technologies and energy manipulation techniques promised to give Stanford capabilities that would place him among the most powerful beings who had ever existed. Bill's gradual introduction of increasingly ambitious research projects reflected his masterful manipulation of Stanford's scientific enthusiasm and personal ambitions, as each successful collaboration created precedents for accepting even more dangerous proposals without adequate consideration of their potential consequences. The Dream Demon's suggestions evolved from theoretical discussions about dimensional physics to practical applications involving the construction of devices and facilities that could channel and manipulate forces that existed outside the normal parameters of physical law. The most significant of Bill's proposals emerged during the spring of 1983, when the Dream Demon began describing the theoretical foundations for constructing a portal that could create stable passages between dimensions, enabling direct physical travel between Stanford's familiar reality and the higher planes of existence where Bill claimed to reside. The mathematical elegance of the portal's design, combined with the unprecedented research opportunities that such a device could provide, proved irresistible to Stanford's scientific imagination. Despite the enormous technical challenges and potential dangers that the project would obviously entail, Stanford's acceptance of Bill's portal project marked a fundamental transformation in both the scope and the nature of his research activities, as he began converting the basement beneath the Mystery Shack into a facility capable of housing and operating technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible, using materials and energy sources available in time, three-dimensional space. The construction requirements that Bill specified demanded precision engineering and exotic materials that tested Stanford's resourcefulness and problem-solving abilities, while gradually isolating him from the community. Relationships that had previously provided both practical support and emotional stability. The recruitment of Fiddleford Hadron McGucket to assist with the portal project represented Stanford's last attempt to maintain some connection to conventional scientific methodology and peer collaboration, though his choice of research partner reflected the increasingly secretive nature of his work and his growing reluctance to share complete information, even with his most trusted colleagues. Fiddleford's background in mechanical engineering and computer science made him ideally qualified to assist with the technical aspects of portal construction, but Stanford's inability to fully explain the project's true nature and ultimate purpose created tensions that would ultimately prove catastrophic for both men. Fiddleford's arrival in Gravity Falls during the autumn of 1983 brought a renewed sense of scientific collaboration and intellectual partnership to Stanford's work, as the two brilliant researchers combined their complementary expertise to tackle engineering challenges that neither could have solved independently. Fiddleford's practical approach to problem-solving provided a valuable counterbalance to Stanford's increasingly theoretical and esoteric research methods, while his emotional stability and social awareness served as anchors to conventional reality that Stanford was gradually losing through his deepening involvement with Bill's cosmic agenda. The early phases of portal construction proceeded with remarkable efficiency and technical success, as Stanford and Fiddleford developed innovative solutions to problems that existed at the intersection of multiple scientific disciplines, while pushing the boundaries of what was possible using terrestrial materials and manufacturing technique. The device that gradually took shape in the expanded basement facility beneath the Mystery Shack represented a masterwork of engineering that combined conventional physics with theoretical principles that Bill had introduced through his dream communications with Stanford. Fiddleford's growing concerns about the portal project reflected both his engineer's instinct for identifying potential failure modes and his increasing awareness that Stanford's research had progressed far beyond the boundaries of conventional scientific investigation into territories where the normal safeguards and ethical considerations of academic research might prove inadequate to protect them from consequences that neither of them fully understood. His attempts to discuss these concerns with Stanford met with reassurances that became increasingly hollow as the project advanced toward completion. The first successful activation of the interdimensional portal in early 1984 represented both the culmination of Stanford's research career and the beginning of a nightmare that would ultimately consume everything he had worked to build during his decade in Gravity Falls. The device functioned exactly as Bill had promised, creating a stable passage between dimensions that allowed for the direct observation and exploration of realms that existed beyond the normal boundaries of three-dimensional space and time. Fiddleford's brief journey through the activated portal provided the first glimpse of what lay beyond the dimensional barriers that the device could breach, but his experience in those alien realms proved so traumatic that his sanity never fully recovered from the encounter. The knowledge he gained during those few terrifying moments in Bill's dimension revealed the true nature of the entity that Stanford had been collaborating with, exposing the cosmic horror that lurked behind the Dream Demon's facade of intellectual sophistication and benevolent partnership. The revelation of Bill Cipher's true nature and malevolent intentions shattered Stanford's worldview in ways that years of supernatural research had never prepared him to handle, forcing him to confront the possibility that his greatest scientific achievement might represent humanity's greatest existential threat. Bill's true form and purpose, revealed through Fiddleford's traumatized testimony and Stanford's own increasingly disturbing dream encounters, exposed the Dream Demon as a force of chaos and destruction, whose ultimate goal involved nothing less than the complete annihilation of physical reality as humans understood it. Bill's manipulation of Stanford's research had been part of a cosmic conspiracy that spanned eons and dimensions, as the Dream Demon sought to create permanent passages between his realm of pure chaos and the ordered physical universe where human civilization had developed. The portal that Stanford had constructed under Bill's guidance was not merely a research tool, but a weapon of unimaginable destructive potential, capable of unleashing forces that could unravel the fundamental structures that maintained the stability and coherence of three-dimensional space. The cosmic scope of Bill's ambitions became increasingly apparent as Stanford delved deeper into research that had previously seemed purely theoretical, discovering that the Dream Demon's influence extended far beyond their personal collaboration to encompass manipulation of dimensional relationships across vast reaches of space and time. Bill's patient cultivation of Stanford's research had been merely one element in a complex strategy designed to weaken the barriers that protected physical reality from the entropic forces that Bill represented and commanded. Stanford's desperate attempts to understand and counter Bill's influence led him into areas of research that pushed his sanity to its limits, as he struggled to comprehend cosmic principles and dimensional relationships that human consciousness had never been designed to process. The knowledge he gained during this period came at tremendous personal cost, as exposure to information about the true nature of reality and humanity's place within the cosmic order gradually eroded his ability to function within the comfortable illusions that made normal life possible. The development of protective measures against Bill's influence became Stanford's primary focus, as he gradually understood the magnitude of the threat that his research had inadvertently unleashed. But his efforts to create effective defenses were hampered by the very knowledge that Bill had provided during their earlier collaboration. The theoretical frameworks and technological capabilities that the Dream Demon had shared were fundamentally tainted by their source, making it difficult for Stanford to distinguish between genuine insights and manipulative deceptions designed to further Bill's cosmic agenda. Fiddleford's parallel research into methods for dealing with traumatic knowledge led to his development of the memory gun, a device capable of selectively erasing specific memories and experiences while leaving other cognitive functions intact. The invention represented a desperate attempt to find refuge from knowledge that proved too terrible for human consciousness to bear. But the device's use carried its own dangers and moral complexities that neither researcher had adequately considered before beginning their experiments with controlled amnesia. The tragedy that befell Fiddleford McGucket during this period served as a horrifying preview of what could happen to human consciousness when exposed to cosmic truths that transcended the boundaries of normal comprehension, as his gradual descent into madness demonstrated the ultimate consequences of pursuing knowledge without adequate consideration of its psychological and spiritual costs. His transformation from brilliant engineer to broken hermit represented the price that mortals paid for glimpsing realities that existed beyond the protective boundaries of ignorance and limited perception. Stanford's growing isolation from the Gravity Falls community during this period reflected both his deepening involvement with cosmic forces that ordinary humans could not understand, and his increasing awareness that his research posed existential threats to everyone around him. The relationships he had carefully cultivated during his first decade in the valley began to deteriorate as his behavior became increasingly erratic and his explanations for his activities grew more secretive and implausible. The completion of his research journals during this period represented Stanford's attempt to preserve the knowledge he had gained while creating warning systems that could help future researchers avoid the catastrophic mistakes that had characterized his collaboration with Bill Cipher. The 3 volumes he produced combined rigorous scientific documentation with increasingly desperate warnings about the dangers that lurked beneath the seemingly innocent surface of dimensional research, creating a legacy that could serve both as invaluable resource and terrible cautionary tale. Stanford's preparation for dimensional exile represented the ultimate sacrifice that his pursuit of knowledge had demanded, as he recognized that remaining in his own reality would inevitably result in Bill's successful manipulation of the Portal Project to achieve the Dream Demon's apocalyptic goals. The measures he took to hide the portal and protect his research from discovery required him to abandon not only his life's work, but also the community that had become his home and the identity he had spent decades building. The desperate letters that Stanford sent to his estranged twin brother Stanley during his final days in Gravity Falls represented both a plea for help and an attempt to pass on responsibilities that he could no longer bear alone. Though his inability to fully explain the situation created conditions for misunderstanding and tragedy that would reverberate through both their lives for decades to come. The cryptic warnings and incomplete information he provided reflected both his genuine desire to protect Stanley from knowledge that had proven so destructive and his own psychological fragmentation under the enormous stresses that cosmic awareness had imposed upon his human consciousness. The final confrontation between Stanford and Bill Cipher that preceded the portal activation and Stanford's banishment to alternate dimensions represented the culmination of a relationship that had begun with intellectual seduction and evolved into cosmic warfare, as the human researcher finally understood the true nature of the forces he had been manipulating and the ultimate consequences that his research would have for all sentient life in his home dimension. Bill's revelation of his true intentions during this climactic encounter exposed the Dream Demon's patient manipulation of Stanford's research as part of a multi-dimensional conspiracy that had been developing across vast expanses of time and space, with the Portal Project representing merely the final phase of a cosmic strategy designed to breach the barriers that protected physical reality from the entropic forces that Bill commanded. The scope of the threat that Stanford's collaboration had helped to create exceeded anything that human civilization had ever faced, making his desperate decision to exile himself a necessary sacrifice to prevent immediate catastrophe. The activation of the portal that banished Stanford to alien dimensions, while simultaneously creating conditions for Stanley's eventual arrival at the Mystery Shack, marked the end of one phase of the cosmic struggle between order and chaos, while setting the stage for conflicts that would ultimately determine the fate of not only Gravity Falls, but all of physical reality. Stanford's disappearance into the swirling vortex of dimensional energy represented both personal tragedy and cosmic necessity, as his exile provided the only means of preventing Bill's immediate access to the physical realm, while creating opportunities for future resistance that neither Stanford nor Bill could fully anticipate. The empty Mystery Shack that remained after Stanford's banishment contained within its hidden chambers and secret passages all the accumulated knowledge and dangerous technologies that 10 years of supernatural research had produced, creating both invaluable resources for future investigators and terrible dangers for anyone who might stumble upon them without adequate preparation or understanding. The stage was now set for the arrival of someone who would face the awesome responsibility of managing forces and knowledge that had proven too powerful and dangerous for even Stanford's brilliant mind to control safely. The road that brought Stanley Pines to Gravity Falls in the winter of 1982 stretched behind him like a catalogue of failures and missed opportunities, each mile marker a reminder of the bridges he had burned and the chances he had squandered during a lifetime of choosing the easy path over the right one. His battered Studebaker wheezed and complained as it climbed the mountain passes that led into the valley, its engine reflecting the accumulated damage of years spent fleeing from consequences that always seemed to catch up, no matter how far or fast he traveled. Stanley's criminal background had been assembled piece by piece across 2 decades of small-time cons and get-rich-quick schemes that invariably collapsed under the weight of his own poor judgment and worse luck, leaving him with a reputation that preceded him into every new town and a collection of outstanding warrants that made staying in any one place for too long an increasingly dangerous proposition. His talents for deception and misdirection, which might have served him well in legitimate enterprises, had instead been channeled into increasingly desperate attempts to maintain a lifestyle that his actual skills and work ethic could never have supported. The estrangement between the Pines twins had begun in childhood with personality differences that seemed minor but gradually expanded into philosophical chasms that made meaningful communication increasingly difficult as they grew older, and their life paths diverged ever more dramatically. Where Stanford had channeled his intelligence and ambition into academic achievement and scientific research, Stanley had relied on charm and cunning to talk his way out of problems that proper planning and honest effort could have avoided entirely. The final breach between the brothers had occurred during their teenage years when Stanley's selfish behavior had destroyed Stanford's chances for acceptance into his dream college, a betrayal that represented not merely personal disappointment, but the shattering of carefully laid plans that had been years in the making. The fight that followed had been so bitter and comprehensive that it had severed not only their fraternal bond but also their connection to the family structure that had shaped their early lives, sending them into adulthood as strangers who shared only blood and bitter memories. The cryptic postcard that summoned Stanley to Gravity Falls arrived at a moment when his options had been reduced to a choice between answering his brother's desperate plea for help or facing the increasingly likely prospect of prison. Time for his latest failed scheme, making the journey to the Pacific Northwest seem like deliverance rather than merely another detour in his seemingly endless flight from responsibility and consequences. The message itself provided no details about why Stanford needed him or what kind of assistance he might be expected to provide. But the very fact that his estranged twin had reached out after decades of silence suggested circumstances desperate enough to overcome even their long-standing mutual resentment. The mystery shack that greeted Stanley upon his arrival seemed to embody everything he had always resented about his brother's success, a tangible manifestation of the academic achievement and social acceptance that had always come so easily to Stanford, while remaining frustratingly beyond Stanley's reach, despite his own considerable intelligence and determination. The building's combination of scientific sophistication and tourist appeal represented exactly the kind of legitimate enterprise that Stanley had always told himself he was too smart and too independent to pursue through conventional means. The reunion between the brothers unfolded in Stanford's basement laboratory with a mixture of desperate relief and accumulated resentment that 20 years of separation had done nothing to diminish, as each man struggled to reconcile his memories of their shared childhood with the realities of what they had become during their decades apart. Stanford's appearance shocked Stanley, with its evidence of stress and exhaustion that went far beyond the normal toll of academic research, while Stanford found himself confronting a brother whose life of petty crime and constant deception had left him hardened and cynical in ways that the sheltered world of academic research had never required him to become. Stanford's attempt to explain the cosmic significance of his research and the existential threat that Bill Cipher represented fell upon ears that had been trained by years of criminal activity to listen for practical details, rather than theoretical implications, creating a communication gap that proved impossible to bridge in the limited time available before the forces that Stanford had unleashed reached their inevitable culmination. Stanley's street-smart skepticism, which had served him well in identifying con artists and avoiding obvious traps, proved inadequate for comprehending dangers that operated according to principles that had no parallel in the mundane world of petty crime and small-time deception. The fateful confrontation that led to Stanford's banishment began as an argument about family responsibility and personal accountability, subjects that had been sources of conflict between the brothers since childhood, but escalated into physical violence when Stanley's attempt to prevent Stanford from destroying the portal resulted in the accidental activation of the device that had consumed over 2 years of research and construction. The moment when Stanford was pulled into the swirling vortex of dimensional energy represented not only personal tragedy, but also the ultimate failure of communication between two brilliant men whose different approaches to problem-solving had prevented them from finding common ground even when facing cosmic catastrophe. Stanley's decision to assume his brother's identity represented both practical necessity and emotional capitulation, as he found himself inheriting not only Stanford's name and social position, but also the accumulated responsibilities and consequences of research that he could neither understand nor abandon. The transformation from Stanley Pines, the small-time criminal, into Stanford Pines, the respected researcher, required him to master not only the surface details of academic life, but also the complex web of relationships and obligations that his brother had developed during his decade in Gravity Falls. The learning curve that Stanley faced in operating the Mystery Shack as a legitimate business challenged every assumption he had developed about how enterprises succeed or fail, forcing him to discover that honest work and customer service required skills that his criminal background had never taught him, while offering rewards that his previous lifestyle had never provided. The tourists who visited his establishment expected value and entertainment, rather than the quick exploitation that had characterized his previous business dealings, creating opportunities for genuine satisfaction that came from meeting people's actual needs, rather than manipulating their weaknesses. Stanley's gradual development of the mystery persona represented both practical camouflage for his true identity and genuine personal growth, as he discovered talents for showmanship and customer relations that had been dormant during his years of criminal activity. The character he created drew upon his natural charisma and storytelling abilities, while channeling them into legitimate entertainment that provided genuine value to his customers, creating a sustainable business model that offered both financial security and personal satisfaction that his criminal career had never achieved. The relationship that Stanley developed with the residents of Gravity Falls required him to navigate social dynamics that were far more complex than anything he had encountered during his nomadic life of petty crime, as he gradually learned to function within a community where reputation and trust were built through consistent behavior over extended periods, rather than through the manipulation and deception that had previously defined his interactions with other people. The acceptance he gradually earned from his neighbors represented the first genuine belonging he had experienced since his childhood, creating emotional investments that made abandoning his assumed identity increasingly unthinkable, even as the deception itself became increasingly difficult to maintain. The discovery of Stanford's research materials and the gradual comprehension of their significance provided Stanley with insights into his brother's final years that were both illuminating and terrifying, as he slowly pieced together the story of dimensional research and cosmic conspiracy that had led to Stanford's banishment. The journals and laboratory equipment that filled the Mystery Shack's hidden chambers represented knowledge and power that Stanley knew he was unqualified to handle, but also the only possible means of reversing the tragedy that had separated him from the brother he had traveled so far to help. Stanley's attempts to understand and operate the sophisticated equipment that Stanford had assembled in the basement laboratory required him to develop technical skills that his criminal background had never provided while working with technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible using terrestrial science and engineering. The learning process was made more difficult by the incomplete nature of Stanford's documentation and the obvious dangers associated with experimental procedures that had already proven capable of tearing holes in the fabric of reality itself. The constant struggle to reactivate the portal while maintaining the Mystery Shack as a functioning business created a double life that tested Stanley's abilities as both engineer and entertainer, forcing him to balance the demands of cosmic research with the practical requirements of tourist management, while ensuring that neither pursuit interfered with the other in ways that could expose his true identity or endanger the community he had grown to care about. The isolation that this deception required took a toll on his mental and emotional health that grew heavier with each passing year. The development of relationships with employees like Seuss and later Wendy provided Stanley with the first genuinely positive interpersonal connections he had experienced in decades, as these young people saw past his gruff exterior to recognize the fundamental decency and loyalty that his criminal lifestyle had never quite managed to corrupt. Their trust and affection became among his most treasured possessions, creating additional motivation for maintaining the deception that allowed him to continue functioning as their employer and father figure. The financial challenges of operating the Mystery Shack while funding expensive research into dimensional physics required Stanley to develop business acumen that his previous criminal enterprises had never demanded, as he learned to balance legitimate customer service with cost control and revenue generation in ways that could sustain both his public operations and his secret research over extended periods. The success he achieved in this balancing act represented personal growth that would have seemed impossible during his earlier years of constant failure and criminal behavior. Stanley's growing understanding of the supernatural ecology that surrounded Gravity Falls opened his eyes to wonders and dangers that his cynical worldview had never prepared him to acknowledge, gradually transforming his perspective on reality itself, while providing him with knowledge that proved essential for protecting both himself and his community from threats that conventional law enforcement could never have handled. The respect he developed for forces beyond human control represented a fundamental shift in the arrogance and self-centeredness that had characterized his earlier approach to life. The decades that passed while Stanley worked to master Stanford's portal technology were marked by incremental progress, punctuated by setbacks and discoveries that alternately raised and dashed his hopes for successfully reversing his brother's banishment, creating a cycle of emotional highs and lows that tested his determination while gradually building the expertise he would eventually need to complete his mission. Each small victory in understanding how the portal functioned brought him closer to his goal, while revealing new complexities that made the final success seem ever more distant and uncertain. The community relationships that Stanley built during his years as the Mystery Shack's proprietor created a network of support and obligation that gave meaning to his life, while simultaneously complicating his secret mission as he found himself genuinely caring about people whose safety might be endangered by the dimensional experiments he was conducting in pursuit of his brother's rescue. The balance between personal loyalty and cosmic responsibility became increasingly difficult to maintain as his research progressed toward its climactic phases. Stanley's transformation from selfish criminal to beloved community figure represented redemption on a scale that few people ever achieve, as he gradually learned to find satisfaction in helping others and contributing to something larger than his own immediate interests, while developing the patience and dedication necessary to pursue long-term goals that required sustained effort over multiple decades. The man who emerged from this process bore little resemblance to the bitter con artist who had arrived in Gravity Falls 30 years earlier. The success of Stanley's tourist operation provided him with not only the financial resources necessary to continue his research, but also the social camouflage that allowed him to function within the community without arousing suspicions that could have led to investigations capable of exposing both his true identity and his dangerous experiments with dimensional technology. The careful balance he maintained between obvious hokum and genuine mystery kept his customers satisfied, while protecting the deeper secrets that required absolute secrecy for both personal and public safety. The approach of the portal's final reactivation brought Stanley face to face with the possibility that his decades of work and sacrifice might finally achieve their intended goal, but also with the recognition that success would inevitably bring changes that could threaten everything he had built during his years in Gravity Falls, forcing him to confront questions about identity and purpose that had been temporarily postponed by the demands of his secret mission, but could no longer be avoided as the moment of truth approached. The arrival of the summer that would change everything represented both the culmination of Stanley's long struggle to rescue his brother and the beginning of challenges that would test not only his technical abilities and emotional resilience, but also his capacity for the kind of honesty and vulnerability that his lifetime of deception had taught him to avoid, setting the stage for revelations and confrontations that would determine whether the redemption he had achieved during his years in Gravity Falls could survive the restoration of the brother whose rescue had motivated every sacrifice he had made. The summer of 2012 arrived in Gravity Falls with the kind of crystalline perfection that transforms ordinary moments into memories that last lifetimes, carrying with it two passengers whose presence would fundamentally alter not only the carefully maintained equilibrium of the Mystery Shack, but also the cosmic balance between order and chaos that had defined the supernatural landscape of the valley for generations. Dipper and Mabel Pines descended from their parents' station wagon with the awkward energy of 12-year-olds who had been uprooted from familiar surroundings and deposited in a world that seemed to operate according to rules they had never encountered, their expectations shaped by urban life and conventional education that had provided no preparation for the wonders and terrors that awaited them in their great-uncle's domain. The twins' arrival at the Mystery Shack represented the convergence of multiple forces that had been building toward this moment for decades, as Stanley's carefully constructed double life prepared to face its greatest test, while the supernatural ecosystem of Gravity Falls sensed the presence of individuals whose natural curiosity and courage would inevitably draw them into conflicts that had been simmering beneath the surface of ordinary life since their great-uncle's initial experiments with dimensional physics 30 years earlier. The innocent enthusiasm with which they approached their summer vacation created conditions for discoveries that would challenge everything they thought they knew about reality, while forcing Stanley to confront the possibility that his secret mission might require him to place the children he was growing to love in dangers that no responsible adult should ever have to contemplate. Dipper's intellectual disposition and methodical approach to problem-solving marked him as a natural heir to the scientific tradition that had characterized both Stanford's original research and Stanley's subsequent efforts to master the technologies and knowledge that his brother had left behind. Though his 12-year-old perspective and limited life experience created blind spots that would prove both protective and potentially catastrophic, as he began to encounter phenomena that challenged adult understanding of what was possible within the boundaries of natural law. His desire to solve mysteries and understand hidden truths resonated with the same drives that had motivated Stanford's initial investigations into the supernatural ecology of Gravity Falls, creating both opportunities for breakthrough discoveries and possibilities for repeating the mistakes that had led to cosmic disaster 3 decades earlier. Mabel's emotional intelligence and natural empathy provided a counterbalance to her brother's analytical tendencies, while offering perspectives on supernatural encounters that pure intellectual analysis could never achieve. Her ability to form genuine connections with beings whose motivations and psychology operated according to non-human principles, proving essential for navigating social dynamics that existed at the intersection of mundane community, life, and cosmic horror. Her optimistic worldview and faith in the fundamental goodness of others created both protection against the corrupting influences that had destroyed other researchers and vulnerability to manipulation by entities whose apparent benevolence masked intentions that transcended human comprehension. The impact that the twins had on the Mystery Shack's atmosphere became apparent within days of their arrival, as their youthful energy and genuine curiosity transformed the building from a carefully managed tourist trap designed to hide dangerous secrets into something approaching a genuine family home where wonder and adventure had become part of daily life rather than carefully controlled performance. Stanley's gradual recognition that he had developed genuine affection for the children placed in his care created emotional complications that threatened to interfere with the single-minded focus that had sustained his 30-year mission to rescue Stanford, forcing him to balance his cosmic responsibilities against human obligations that he had not anticipated when he began his long journey toward redemption. The discovery of Journal Number 3 by Dipper during his exploration of the forests surrounding the Mystery Shack represented a watershed moment in the hidden history of Gravity Falls, as Stanford's carefully preserved documentation of supernatural phenomena fell into hands that belonged to someone with both the courage necessary to investigate such matters and the innocence required to approach them without the paralyzing fear that had prevented most adults from pursuing similar knowledge. The journal's emergence from its hiding place after decades of concealment seemed to fulfill some cosmic requirement for balance, ensuring that Stanford's warnings and discoveries would be available to the next generation of investigators at precisely the moment when such knowledge would prove essential for survival. The gradual revelation of the Mystery Shack's true nature unfolded throughout the summer in a series of discoveries and encounters that challenged every assumption the twins had developed about their great-uncle's business and their own place within the cosmic order. Each new piece of evidence adding to a puzzle whose complete solution would require them to reconceptualize not only their understanding of reality, but also their perception of family relationships and the responsibilities that came with knowledge of forces that operated beyond the boundaries of conventional morality. The building itself seemed to participate in these revelations, as hidden passages and secret chambers made themselves known to young explorers whose natural curiosity overcame the adult caution that might have left such mysteries permanently concealed. Bill Cipher's return to active involvement in the affairs of Gravity Falls coincided with the twins' arrival in ways that suggested supernatural intelligence behind the timing, as the Dream Demon recognized in their youthful enthusiasm and incomplete knowledge both opportunities for manipulation and threats to plans that had been developing across dimensions for eons beyond human comprehension. The entity's approach to the children demonstrated the same masterful understanding of psychology and motivation that had proven so effective in his corruption of Stanford, though his techniques had evolved to account for generational differences and the unique vulnerabilities that characterized 12-year-old minds, still forming their fundamental concepts of reality and morality. The supernatural encounters that punctuated the twins' summer vacation served multiple functions within the larger cosmic narrative that was unfolding around them, providing both practical education in the techniques necessary for surviving contact with entities whose power transcended human understanding, and emotional preparation for the moral choices that would ultimately determine whether their presence in Gravity Falls would contribute to the preservation of reality or its destruction. Each adventure built upon the previous ones to create a curriculum in supernatural awareness that no earthly institution could have provided, while gradually revealing the stakes involved in the ancient conflict between order and chaos that had been playing out in the valley since before human civilization had established its first permanent settlements. The Mystery Shack's transformation from hiding place to headquarters during this period reflected both the twins' growing awareness of their great uncle's secrets and Stanley's gradual recognition that maintaining absolute secrecy had become impossible once genuinely curious and intelligent children had begun asking questions that penetrated the carefully constructed facades he had spent decades perfecting. The building's dual nature, as both public tourist attraction and private research facility, created opportunities for education and mentorship that neither Stanley nor the children had anticipated, while generating risks that threatened to expose the entire operation to scrutiny from authorities who lacked the preparation necessary to handle such knowledge responsibly. Stanley's evolution from secretive guardian to reluctant mentor during this period demonstrated both his growing affection for the children and his recognition that their natural gifts for supernatural investigation made them valuable allies in his ongoing mission to rescue Stanford, though his attempts to balance protection of their innocence against preparation for the cosmic dangers they would inevitably face created internal conflicts that tested his emotional stability while forcing him to confront aspects of his own psychology that he had spent decades avoiding through constant focus on external goals and objectives. The man who had spent 30 years hiding behind assumed identities found himself learning to be genuinely honest for the first time since childhood, a process that proved both liberating and terrifying. The family dynamics that developed within the Mystery Shack during this transformative summer created bonds that transcended the conventional relationships between great-uncle and grandnieces and nephews, as shared adventures and mutual protection in the face of supernatural threats forged connections based on loyalty and understanding rather than mere biological obligation or social convention. The trust that gradually developed between Stanley and the twins provided him with the first genuine intimacy he had experienced since his estrangement from Stanford, while offering Dipper and Mabel adult guidance from someone who understood the unique challenges and opportunities that came with knowledge of forces that operated beyond the boundaries of normal human experience. The educational value of the twins' supernatural encounters extended far beyond practical training in monster fighting or ghost detection, providing them with philosophical frameworks for understanding their place within cosmic hierarchies that dwarfed human civilization, while teaching them to recognize the moral responsibilities that came with power and knowledge that most people would never possess. The lessons they learned during their summer vacation would prove essential not only for their immediate survival but also for their eventual roles in conflicts that would determine the fate of reality itself, though the full significance of their education would not become apparent until they faced challenges that tested every skill and insight they had developed. The technological resources that the Mystery Shack provided to support the twins' investigations included both Stanford's original scientific equipment and the additional devices that Stanley had constructed or acquired during his 3 decades of research into dimensional physics, creating opportunities for experimentation and discovery that would have been impossible in any conventional educational setting. The children's natural aptitude for understanding and operating complex machinery surprised Stanley while providing him with assistance in research projects that had previously required him to work alone, creating collaborative relationships that enhanced both his technical capabilities and their scientific education. The network of supernatural contacts that the twins developed during their summer adventures provided them with allies and sources of information that proved essential for understanding the broader context within which their individual encounters were taking place, while gradually revealing the existence of ancient conflicts and cosmic conspiracies that had been shaping events in Gravity Falls for far longer than human civilization had existed in the region. The relationships they formed with various cryptids and supernatural entities demonstrated principles of diplomacy and cross-species cooperation, that had applications extending far beyond their immediate circumstances. The moral education that the twins received through their exposure to beings whose motivations and ethical frameworks operated according to non-human principles challenged their assumptions about good and evil, while teaching them to recognize that power without wisdom inevitably led to corruption, and that knowledge without compassion could become a source of cosmic horror rather than enlightenment. The examples they witnessed of supernatural entities who had chosen different paths in response to similar temptations provided object lessons in the consequences of moral choices that would prove crucial for their own ethical development. The psychological resilience that Dipper and Mabel developed through their repeated exposure to phenomena that would have shattered adult minds, less prepared for contact with cosmic forces beyond human comprehension, demonstrated both their natural gifts for supernatural investigation and the protective effects of youth and optimism in dealing with knowledge that had driven other researchers to madness or despair. Their ability to maintain essential humanity while gaining awareness of their insignificance within vast cosmic hierarchies represented achievements that few adults had ever managed, creating hope that their generation might succeed where previous investigators had failed. The seasonal rhythms that governed supernatural activity and gravity falls created natural breaks in the intensity of the twins' education, allowing them time to process and integrate the knowledge and experiences they had gained, while providing opportunities for the kind of normal childhood activities that maintained their emotional balance and prevented the isolation that had contributed to Stanford's eventual corruption by forces beyond his understanding. The balance between extraordinary adventure and ordinary summer vacation activities proved essential for their psychological health, while ensuring that their supernatural education enhanced rather than replaced their normal human development. The approach of summer's end brought with it the recognition that the twins' time in Gravity Falls would soon conclude, creating urgency around both Stanley's mission to rescue Stanford and the children's desire to understand the full scope of the mysteries they had been investigating, setting the stage for revelations and confrontations that would test everything they had learned, while determining whether their summer education had prepared them adequately for the cosmic responsibilities that awaited them in the cause. Conflicts ahead. The transformation of three individuals who had begun the summer as strangers into a family united by shared knowledge and mutual protection represented an achievement that would prove essential for humanity's survival in the battles that lay ahead. The moment of cosmic convergence that had been building for 3 decades reached its crescendo on a day when the very foundations of reality seemed to tremble with anticipation, as forces that had been held in careful balance since Stanford's banishment finally aligned in configurations that made the impossible inevitable and the unthinkable unavoidable. The portal that Stanley had labored to reactivate through years of painstaking research and desperate experimentation hummed with energies that transcended the normal boundaries of three-dimensional physics, its machinery channeling powers that originated in dimensions where the concepts of space and time operated according to principles that human consciousness had never been designed to comprehend or control. The reactivation sequence that Stanley initiated in the depths of the Mystery Shack's basement laboratory represented both the culmination of his 30-year mission and the beginning of events that would challenge every assumption about reality that had guided human civilization since its earliest attempts to understand the natural world. As the portal's dimensional gateway tore through barriers that had been weakening for generations while creating opportunities for entities whose existence predated the formation of physical matter to influence events in realms where their presence had previously been constrained by cosmic laws that operated beyond mortal understanding. Stanford's emergence from the swirling vortex of interdimensional energy carried with it the accumulated knowledge and trauma of 3 decades spent navigating realities where the normal concepts of cause and effect had been replaced by cosmic principles that defied rational analysis. His physical appearance bearing the marks of exposures to environments and entities that had tested his humanity, while his psychological state reflected the profound changes that resulted from sustained contact with forces that operated on scales that dwarfed human civilization and rendered individual existence nearly meaningless within the vast hierarchies of cosmic power. The reunion between the Pines twins after 30 years of separation unfolded in the basement laboratory with a mixture of overwhelming relief and barely contained resentment that decades of accumulated hurt and misunderstanding had done nothing to diminish, each brother struggling to reconcile his memories of their shared past with the realities of what they had become during their separate journeys through experiences that had fundamentally altered their perspectives on family, responsibility, and the price that must sometimes be paid for knowledge that transcends the comfortable boundaries of ignorance and conventional wisdom. Stanley's expectation that his brother would express gratitude for the sacrifices that had made his rescue possible collided with Stanford's fury at the risks that portal reactivation had created for both the immediate community and the broader cosmic order, their argument revealing fundamental differences in how they understood the relationship between personal loyalty and universal responsibility that had been developing since childhood, but had reached critical intensity during their decades of separation and individual growth through experiences that had challenged both their moral frameworks and their emotional resilience. The physical confrontation that erupted between the brothers represented not merely the release of 30 years of accumulated anger and disappointment, but also the collision between two completely different approaches to handling cosmic knowledge and supernatural responsibility, as Stanley's pragmatic focus on family relationships and immediate problems clashed with Stanford's academic understanding of the broader implications and potential consequences that their actions might have for the stability of reality itself and the safety of countless beings whose existence depended upon maintaining the barriers between dimensions that the portal had been designed to breach. Stanford's attempts to explain the cosmic significance of the threats that portal reactivation had potentially unleashed met with Stanley's street-smart skepticism and emotional exhaustion, creating communication failures that prevented either brother from fully understanding the other's perspective while generating conflicts that threatened to prevent the cooperation that would prove essential for managing the crisis that their reunion had inadvertently triggered. The intellectual frameworks that had guided Stanford's research could not adequately convey the emotional realities of Stanley's 30-year struggle, while Stanley's practical experience with deception and survival provided no preparation for comprehending dangers that operated according to principles that transcended normal human understanding of cause and effect. The presence of Dipper and Mabel during this climactic reunion added layers of complexity to family dynamics that were already strained beyond normal limits, as the twins struggled to understand revelations about their great-uncle's true relationship and hidden history, while simultaneously processing information about cosmic threats and dimensional conspiracies that challenged every assumption they had developed about reality during their summer of supernatural education in the apparently safe environment of the Mystery Shack and the surrounding Gravity Falls community. Bill Cipher's manipulation of these family tensions demonstrated the same masterful understanding of human psychology that had enabled his original corruption of Stanford, as the Dream Demon recognized in the Pines family's conflicts both opportunities for achieving his cosmic objectives and potential obstacles that would need to be eliminated before his plans for dimensional conquest could proceed to their ultimate culmination. The entity's ability to exploit personal relationships and emotional vulnerabilities while simultaneously orchestrating supernatural events that operated on scales beyond human comprehension revealed the sophisticated nature of threats that transcended simple categories of good and evil. The gradual escalation of supernatural activity throughout Gravity Falls during this period reflected both the portal's influence on local dimensional stability and Bill Cipher's increasing confidence that his long-delayed plans for reality-wide conquest were finally approaching fruition, as phenomena that had previously been constrained to isolated incidents began manifesting with frequency and intensity that threatened to overwhelm the community's traditional methods for managing supernatural encounters while creating conditions that would ultimately enable the demon's transformation from hidden manipulator to overt cosmic tyrant. The revelation of Stanley's true identity to the broader Gravity Falls community created social disruptions that went far beyond simple questions about fraud or deception, as residents who had known and trusted him for decades were forced to confront the possibility that their understanding of his character and motivations had been based on carefully constructed lies, while simultaneously processing information about dimensional research and cosmic threats that challenged their fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality and their place within cosmic hierarchies that dwarfed human civilization. The transformation of the Mystery Shack from tourist attraction to command center during this crisis period demonstrated both the building's hidden capabilities and the family's growing recognition that their personal conflicts would need to be set aside in favor of cooperation against threats that transcended individual concerns or interpersonal resentments. As the facility's concealed research equipment and defensive systems were pressed into service for purposes that Stanford had originally designed them to fulfill, but that had remained dormant during the decades of Stanley's management and the twins' summer education. Bill Cipher's successful manipulation of both family relationships and supernatural events culminated in his achievement of physical manifestation within three-dimensional reality, an accomplishment that represented the fulfillment of cosmic ambitions that had been developing across eons, while simultaneously creating conditions for the kind of direct confrontation between order and chaos that had been avoided through careful maintenance of dimensional barriers for periods that exceeded the entire history of human civilization on Earth. Weirdmageddon, as the resulting period of reality distortion came to be known, transformed Gravity Falls from a community where supernatural phenomena operated within carefully maintained boundaries into a landscape where the normal laws of physics had been replaced by the whims of an entity whose power transcended human comprehension, while whose motivations reflected a fundamental hostility toward the concepts of order, meaning, and coherent existence that made consciousness and civilization possible within the framework of three-dimensional space. The apocalyptic transformation of the familiar landscape into a realm of cosmic horror challenged every survival skill and piece of supernatural knowledge that the Pines family had accumulated during their various encounters with otherworldly forces, while simultaneously testing the strength of emotional bonds that had been strained by revelations and conflicts that had shattered their previous understanding of family relationships and individual identity within the context of cosmic forces that rendered human concerns seemingly insignificant. The Mystery Shack's transformation into humanity's last bastion against cosmic horror represented both vindication of Stanford's original research priorities and validation of Stanley's 30-year effort to preserve and protect the knowledge and resources that such a crisis would require, as the building's hidden capabilities and defensive systems proved adequate to create a zone of relative stability within a reality that had been fundamentally altered by the presence of an entity whose existence was antithetical to the ordered structure of physical law. The supernatural protection circuits that had been woven into the Mystery Shack's construction during Stanford's original research period revealed themselves to be far more comprehensive and sophisticated than even he had fully understood, incorporating both technological components that operated according to advanced principles of dimensional physics and metaphysical elements that drew upon protective traditions that predated human civilization, while creating defensive capabilities that proved capable of withstanding assault from forces that had conquered entire dimensions. The collaboration between multiple generations of the Pines family in developing strategies for resisting Bill Cipher's reality-warping influence demonstrated both the cumulative value of their diverse experiences and the Pines family essential importance of family relationships that transcended individual differences and personal resentments. As each member contributed unique perspectives and capabilities that proved essential for maintaining hope and effectiveness in the face of cosmic horror that had destroyed countless civilizations across the vast expanse of interdimensional space. Dipper's intellectual analysis of Bill Cipher's behavioral patterns and apparent limitations provided crucial insights into potential weaknesses that could be exploited by opponents who possessed neither the entity's cosmic power nor his multidimensional perspective, while his summer education in supernatural investigation techniques proved invaluable for navigating a reality where conventional logic and cause and effect relationships had been replaced by principles that operated according to the dream demon's whims rather than natural law. Mabel's emotional intelligence and capacity for maintaining interpersonal relationships under extreme stress proved essential for preserving the family unity that was required for effective resistance against an entity whose strategy involved exploiting psychological weaknesses and emotional vulnerabilities to divide potential opponents while preventing the kind of cooperative effort that could pose genuine threats to his cosmic objectives. Stanford's academic knowledge of dimensional theory and supernatural phenomena provided the theoretical framework necessary for understanding Bill Cipher's capabilities and limitations, while his 30 years of experience in alternate realities had given him practical insights into the kinds of strategies that might prove effective against entities whose power transcended normal human comprehension, but whose psychology remained vulnerable to certain forms of deception and manipulation. Stanley's lifetime of experience with confidence games and deceptive practices provided the family with tactical approaches that academic research and supernatural education had never taught, as his understanding of how to mislead opponents and create false impressions proved surprisingly applicable to conflicts with cosmic entities whose arrogance and contempt for human intelligence created opportunities for exploitation by individuals who possessed the courage and creativity necessary to attempt seemingly impossible deceptions. The gradual development of a plan for defeating Bill Cipher required the family to synthesize their diverse areas of expertise while overcoming personal conflicts and emotional barriers that had been preventing effective cooperation, creating conditions where their individual strengths could complement each other, while their personal relationships provided the emotional foundation necessary for attempting sacrifices that pure rational calculation would have deemed unacceptably risky. The recognition that defeating Bill Cipher would require someone to make the ultimate sacrifice transformed family dynamics in ways that revealed the depth of love and commitment that had been obscured by decades of resentment and misunderstanding. As each member faced the possibility that saving reality might require them to lose the relationships that had become the most meaningful aspects of their existence. Stanley's decision to accept the role that would require him to sacrifice not only his life, but also his identity and memories, represented both the culmination of his 30-year journey toward redemption and the ultimate expression of love for family members whose safety had become more important to him than his own survival or personal happiness, transforming him from the selfish criminal who had arrived in Gravity Falls into someone capable of heroism on a cosmic scale. The implementation of the plan that would lure Bill Cipher into a trap that he could not escape required perfect coordination between all family members, while demanding that they maintain deceptions that could not be revealed even to each other until the crucial moment, creating conditions where trust and faith in family relationships became the only foundation for actions that rational analysis would have deemed hopeless. Stanley's assumption of Stanford's identity for the purpose of the final deception represented both poetic justice for 30 years of identity, confusion, and the ultimate test of family bonds that had survived every challenge that life had placed before them, as the success of their plan depended upon Bill Cipher's inability to distinguish between twin brothers whose different life experiences had shaped them into very different people, while leaving unchanged the fundamental love and loyalty that connected them across all differences and disappointments. The cosmic battle that unfolded within Stanley's mind as Bill Cipher attempted to extract the information he needed, while Stanley fought to maintain the deception that would destroy them both, transcended normal concepts of heroism and sacrifice, representing a conflict between individual consciousness and cosmic evil that took place on levels of reality that human language could barely describe, while determining the fate of not only the Pines family, but all of existence within multiple dimensions. The successful completion of the memory erasure that destroyed Bill Cipher, along with Stanley's conscious identity, created both victory and tragedy on scales that challenged everyone's ability to process the emotional, philosophical implications, as the salvation of reality came at the cost of losing the man whose growth and redemption had made such salvation possible, leaving the family to confront questions about identity, memory, and the nature of consciousness that had no easy answers. The gradual restoration of Stanley's memories through exposure to reminders of experiences and relationships that had shaped his identity during his decades in Gravity Falls represented both hope and uncertainty, as the family worked to rebuild connections that transcended individual consciousness, while recognizing that some aspects of loss might prove irreparable despite their deepest desires and most determined efforts. The aftermath of Weirdmageddon left Gravity Falls and the Pines family permanently changed by their encounter with cosmic forces that had tested every aspect of their character, while revealing reserves of courage, love, and determination that none of them had realized they possessed, creating foundations for relationships and understanding that would prove essential for facing whatever challenges the future might bring to a community that had survived the apocalypse through cooperation and sacrifice that transcended normal human capabilities. The healing that followed Weirdmageddon descended upon Gravity Falls like gentle rain after a devastating storm, carrying with it the gradual restoration of both cosmic order and human relationships that had been tested beyond all reasonable limits by forces that transcended normal understanding of what mortal beings should be expected to endure in defense of reality itself. The Pines family emerged from their apocalyptic trial fundamentally transformed by experiences that had revealed depths of courage and devotion none of them had realized they possessed. while simultaneously carrying emotional scars and philosophical questions that would require years of careful attention before they could be adequately processed and integrated into healthier patterns of daily existence. Stanley's gradual recovery of his memories unfolded with the patient rhythm of seasons changing, each familiar sight and cherished relationship slowly rekindling neural pathways that cosmic erasure had temporarily severed, while leaving intact the fundamental character traits and emotional bonds that had defined his identity long before Bill Cipher's intervention had threatened to destroy everything that made him recognizably himself. The process was neither complete nor entirely reliable, creating moments of crystalline clarity interspersed with periods of confusion that tested everyone's faith in the possibility of full restoration, while providing daily reminders of both the fragility of consciousness and the resilience of love that transcended individual memory. Stanford's emotional journey during this recovery period proved every bit as challenging as his brother's neurological healing, as he confronted the full weight of gratitude and guilt that came from recognizing how completely Stanley's 30-year sacrifice had exceeded anything that simple fraternal obligation could have demanded, while simultaneously processing his own role in creating the cosmic crisis that had nearly destroyed everything they cared about. The intellectual frameworks that had guided his academic career provided no adequate preparation for handling emotions that operated on scales as vast as the dimensional forces he had spent decades studying, forcing him to develop entirely new approaches to understanding relationships and responsibilities that transcended purely rational analysis. The twins' processing of their summer experiences required careful balance between acknowledging the genuine trauma that cosmic horror had inflicted upon their 12-year-old psyches and maintaining the sense of wonder, adventure that had enabled them to survive encounters that would have shattered adult minds less flexible and optimistic than their own. Their resilience proved both inspiring and concerning to the adults who cared about them, as the ease with which they adapted to post-apocalyptic reality raised questions about what long-term effects their supernatural education might have on their ability to function within conventional social environments that had never been designed to accommodate individuals with their unique perspectives and experiences. The decision to transfer ownership of the Mystery Shack to Suze represented both practical necessity and symbolic recognition of how fundamentally the crisis had altered traditional concepts of family structure and inheritance, as the young man whose loyalty and competence had sustained the business through its most challenging periods proved himself worthy of responsibilities that extended far beyond conventional employee-employer relationships. His natural gifts for managing both the mundane aspects of tourist operations and the supernatural complexities that would inevitably continue to characterize life in Gravity Falls made him an ideal candidate for preserving the delicate balance between revelation and concealment that had always been essential for the Mystery Shack's successful operation. Seuss's vision for the Mystery Shack's future demonstrated both profound respect for the legacy he had inherited and creative understanding of how that legacy could be adapted to serve new purposes while maintaining the essential characteristics that had made it such a unique and valuable institution within the broader supernatural community of the Pacific Northwest. His plans incorporated lessons learned from both Stanley's pragmatic approach to business management and Stanford's academic commitment to preserving knowledge, creating operational frameworks that could support continued research while providing genuine value to tourists who visited the attraction seeking entertainment rather than cosmic enlightenment. The establishment of new traditions within the transformed Mystery Shack reflected Seuss's recognition that healing and growth required both continuity with the past and willingness to embrace changes that acknowledged how profoundly recent events had altered everyone's understanding of their roles and responsibilities within the larger community. The ceremonies and celebrations he instituted drew upon both the Pines family's accumulated experiences and his own cultural background, creating hybrid observances that honored multiple traditions, while acknowledging the unique circumstances that had brought them all together in service of causes that transcended individual interests or ethnic identities. The balance between honoring the past and embracing change proved particularly challenging when it came to managing the Mystery Shack's relationship with the broader Gravity Falls community, as residents struggled to process revelations about the true nature of events they had witnessed, while maintaining the careful traditions of selective ignorance that had protected their town's secrets for generations. Seuss's diplomatic skills and natural empathy proved essential for navigating social dynamics that had been complicated by knowledge that some people preferred not to possess, while ensuring that those who needed access to supernatural resources could obtain them without compromising community, safety, or individual privacy. The continued supernatural activity that characterized post-Weirdmageddon Gravity Falls operated at reduced intensity compared to the reality-warping chaos that had preceded Bill Cipher's defeat, but still required ongoing vigilance and management from individuals who understood both the dangers and opportunities that such phenomena represented for human communities that had learned to coexist with forces beyond normal comprehension. The Mystery Shack's role as an informal headquarters for supernatural investigation and crisis response became increasingly formalized under Seuss's management, though he maintained the careful balance between accessibility and discretion that had always characterized the facility's most important functions. The network of relationships that connected the Mystery Shack to various supernatural entities throughout the region required delicate maintenance during the transition period, as beings whose existence operated according to non-human temporal scales gradually adapted to changes in management and operational philosophy, while assessing whether new leadership would honor the agreements and understandings that had been developed through decades of careful negotiation. Seuss's natural gift for cross-species communication proved invaluable for maintaining these essential relationships while establishing his own credibility as someone who could be trusted with knowledge and responsibilities that few humans had ever been qualified to handle. The educational programs that Seuss developed for training future generations of supernatural investigators drew upon both the Pines family's accumulated wisdom and his own insights about how such dangerous knowledge could be transmitted safely to individuals who possessed the necessary courage and judgment to handle it responsibly. These programs incorporated both theoretical instruction about dimensional physics and practical training in survival techniques, creating comprehensive curricula that prepared students for encounters with forces that operated beyond the boundaries of conventional understanding, while maintaining the ethical frameworks necessary for preventing the kinds of corrupting influences that had destroyed previous researchers. The research initiatives that continued to operate within the Mystery Shack under Seuss's supervision represented careful balance between advancing human understanding of supernatural phenomena and maintaining the protective secrecy that prevented such knowledge from falling into hands that lacked the wisdom necessary to handle it safely. The projects he approved and funded demonstrated both scientific rigor and ethical responsibility, ensuring that investigations served genuine educational purposes rather than satisfying mere curiosity or advancing personal ambitions that could compromise the safety of individuals or communities who might be affected by their outcomes. The economic sustainability of these expanded operations required Seuss to develop business models that could support increased expenses while maintaining the Mystery Shack's traditional function as a tourist attraction that provided genuine entertainment value to visitors who had no knowledge of or interest in its more serious purposes. His innovations in this area demonstrated both creative problem-solving abilities and deep understanding of how commercial success could be achieved without compromising the integrity of institutions that served multiple constituencies with very different needs and expectations. The seasonal rhythms that had always governed supernatural activity in Gravity Falls gradually reasserted themselves following the cosmic disruptions of Weirdmageddon, creating opportunities for SUS to develop operational schedules that could accommodate both the predictable increases in otherworldly phenomena that occurred during certain astronomical alignments and the unpredictable crises that might emerge from experiments or encounters that exceeded normal parameters of safety and control. His ability to maintain flexibility while ensuring adequate preparation for various contingencies proved essential for protecting both his staff and the broader community from dangers that could emerge without warning. The technological infrastructure that SUS inherited along with the Mystery Shack required significant updating and maintenance to restore full functionality following the reality warping effects that had disrupted both mechanical systems and the more esoteric devices that operated according to principles of dimensional physics that conventional engineering could not adequately address. The renovation projects he supervised demonstrated both respect for Stanford's original designs and willingness to incorporate improvements that reflected advances in both terrestrial technology and supernatural understanding that had occurred during the intervening decades. The archival work that SUS initiated to preserve and organize the vast accumulations of research materials and supernatural artifacts that had been collected over multiple decades of investigation represented both practical necessity and historical obligation, as the knowledge contained within these collections could prove invaluable for future researchers, while requiring careful curation to prevent dangerous information from being accessed by individuals who lacked adequate preparation for handling Suchmaterials safely. The cataloging and storage systems he developed incorporated both conventional library science principles and specialized containment procedures designed specifically for objects and documents that possessed properties that transcended normal understanding of what inanimate materials could accomplish. The community outreach programs that SUS established helped strengthen relationships between the Mystery Shack and various local organizations whose members had been affected by supernatural events, while creating support networks that could provide assistance during future crises that might require coordinated response from multiple groups with different capabilities and resources. These initiatives demonstrated his understanding that the Mystery Shack's role within the broader community extended far beyond its commercial functions to encompass responsibilities for education, protection, and healing that connected it to the fundamental well-being of everyone who lived within the supernatural ecosystem of Gravity Falls. The international connections that SUS developed with similar institutions and researchers in other locations helped establish the Mystery Shack as a significant node within worldwide networks of individuals and organizations dedicated to understanding and managing supernatural phenomena, creating opportunities for collaboration and information exchange that enhanced both local capabilities and global understanding of forces that operated beyond the boundaries of national sovereignty or conventional academic disciplines. These relationships proved particularly valuable for accessing resources and expertise that could not be obtained through purely regional contacts, while contributing to collective efforts that served the interests of human civilization as a whole. The legacy preservation initiatives that SUS undertook ensured that the contributions and sacrifices made by multiple generations of the Pines family would be remembered and honored by future researchers and community members who would benefit from their courage and dedication without necessarily understanding the full scope of what their efforts had accomplished, or the prices they had paid for knowledge and victory that had preserved reality itself from cosmic destruction. The memorials and educational materials he created served both commemorative and instructional purposes, ensuring that essential lessons would not be lost while inspiring others to continue work that required ongoing vigilance and commitment across generations. The cyclical nature of supernatural phenomena that characterized the Gravity Falls region meant that Seuss's stewardship of the Mystery Shack would inevitably face challenges that required the same kinds of courage and wisdom that had enabled previous generations to survive encounters with forces that transcended human understanding. Though his unique combination of practical skills and emotional intelligence provided him with capabilities that were particularly well suited for managing responsibilities that bridged multiple worlds and served multiple constituencies with needs that could not always be reconciled through conventional approaches. The future that stretched ahead for the Mystery Shack under Seuss's leadership carried both promise and uncertainty, as new generations of visitors and researchers would bring their own perspectives and capabilities to work that had been shaped by the accumulated experiences of everyone who had contributed to its development, while facing challenges that would require innovations and adaptations that could not be fully anticipated based on past experience alone. The foundation that had been built through decades of sacrifice and dedication provided a solid base for continued growth and service, while the flexibility that had always characterized the institution's approach to problem-solving ensured that it would remain capable of adapting to whatever circumstances the future might bring to this remarkable corner of the world where mystery and wonder continued their eternal dance between revelation and concealment. The deeper mysteries that lay hidden within the very foundations of the Mystery Shack extended far beyond the obvious secrets that had been revealed during the climactic events of Weirdmageddon, encompassing layers of supernatural significance and dimensional complexity that had been accumulating for decades beneath the awareness of even the most knowledgeable residents, while creating conditions that would influence the building's role within the cosmic order for generations yet to come. The structure itself had become something more than mere wood and stone, through its prolonged exposure to forces that operated according to principles that transcended conventional understanding of how matter and energy interacted within the boundaries of three-dimensional space, transforming it into a nexus where multiple realities converged in ways that defied easy categorization or simple explanation. The connection between the Mystery Shack and Gravity Falls' broader supernatural infrastructure revealed itself through subtle manifestations that required careful observation and sophisticated analytical techniques to detect, interpret. As the building's foundations had been inadvertently positioned at the intersection of ancient energy lines that predated human settlement, while its subsequent modifications and expansions had gradually aligned its architecture with cosmic forces that influenced everything from local weather patterns to the behavioral cycles of cryptids that inhabited the surrounding forest regions. The cumulative effect of these alignments created resonance patterns that amplified certain types of supernatural phenomena while dampening others, establishing the Mystery Shack as both a sanctuary for benevolent entities and a barrier against malevolent forces that sought to exploit the dimensional instabilities that characterized the entire valley. The hidden rooms and passages that honeycomb the building's interior represented only the most obvious manifestations of architectural anomalies that included spatial distortions where corridors extended further than their external dimensions should have allowed, and chambers that seemed to exist partially outside normal three-dimensional geometry while maintaining structural integrity that conventional engineering could not adequately explain. These spaces served multiple functions within the building's complex ecosystem, providing storage for artifacts and equipment that required isolation from normal environmental conditions, while creating refuges where individuals could retreat when exposure to supernatural forces exceeded safe limits for human consciousness and physical health. The dimensional irregularities that permeated the Mystery Shack structure reflected the ongoing influence of portal construction that had fundamentally altered the local fabric of space-time in ways that continued to manifest decades after the original experiments had concluded, creating pockets of altered reality where the normal laws of physics operated according to modified parameters that enabled phenomena ranging from mild temporal displacement to complete suspension of gravitational effects. These irregularities required constant monitoring and occasional intervention to prevent them from expanding beyond manageable boundaries or interfering with the building's primary functions, while their beneficial effects included enhanced containment capabilities for dangerous artifacts and improved protection against intrusion by entities whose existence depended upon stable dimensional conditions. The ongoing influence of the portal's construction on local reality extended far beyond the Mystery Shack's immediate vicinity to encompass subtle modifications in the behavior of supernatural phenomena throughout the Gravity Falls region, as the massive energies that had been channeled through the device during its operational periods had created permanent alterations in the dimensional boundaries that separated the physical world from adjacent realms where different forms of consciousness and matter existed according to alternative organizational principles. These changes manifested in phenomena ranging from increased frequency of cryptid sightings to enhanced psychic sensitivity among long-term residents, creating conditions that made the entire valley more hospitable to supernatural entities while simultaneously increasing the risks associated with uncontrolled dimensional experimentation. The residual traces of various supernatural encounters that had occurred within the Mystery Shack over multiple decades created a complex tapestry of psychic impressions and energy signatures that influenced the building's atmosphere in ways that sensitive individuals could perceive as distinct emotional and spiritual qualities associated with specific locations within the structure. The basement laboratory retained echoes of Stanford's intense scientific dedication and growing desperation during his collaboration with Bill Cipher, while the tourist areas bore the accumulated warmth of Stanley's genuine affection for the visitors whose wonder and delight had provided him with emotional sustenance during his decades of lonely research and secret mission planning. The gift shop's unique atmosphere reflected the complex intersection of commercial necessity and supernatural reality that had defined Stanley's approach to managing the Mystery Shack's dual functions, creating an environment where genuine artifacts of otherworldly origin existed alongside obvious replicas, while maintaining the kind of plausible ambiguity that allowed visitors to choose their own level of belief in the mysteries they encountered. The subtle energy fields that surrounded certain displays provided sensitive individuals with authentic supernatural experiences, while remaining sufficiently low-key to avoid triggering the kind of widespread attention that could have compromised the facility's essential secrecy. The building's role in maintaining the balance between dimensions operated through mechanisms that included both technological systems that Stanford had deliberately installed and natural phenomena that had emerged through the potent structure's prolonged exposure to cosmic forces, creating redundant layers of protection that could function independently while providing enhanced security when operating in coordination with each other. The most sophisticated of these systems drew power directly from the dimensional instabilities that they were designed to regulate, creating self-sustaining cycles that could operate indefinitely without external maintenance, while adapting automatically to changes in local supernatural conditions. The network of protective wards and containment fields that permeated the Mystery Shack structure incorporated both ancient techniques that had been developed by indigenous peoples and cutting-edge applications of dimensional physics that pushed the boundaries of what was theoretically possible using terrestrial materials and energy sources, creating hybrid defensive systems that proved effective against threats ranging from simple poltergeist activity to full-scale dimensional invasions. The integration of these diverse protective methodologies required sophisticated understanding of how different types of supernatural phenomena interacted with each other, while maintaining careful balance between conflicting approaches to managing otherworldly forces. The underground chambers that extended beneath the Mystery Shack's visible foundation reached depths that seemed to violate the known geology of the region, while connecting to natural cave systems that predated human settlement showed evidence of modification by intelligence that operated according to non-human aesthetic and engineering principles. These spaces served as repositories for artifacts and specimens that required special environmental conditions, while providing access to underground networks that connected the Mystery Shack to other significant locations throughout the Baichi Gravity Falls region, creating transportation and communication systems that operated independently of surface infrastructure. The temporal anomalies that affected certain areas within the Mystery Shack created pockets where time moved at different rates relative to normal flow, enabling researchers to conduct experiments that required extended observation periods while minimizing the time investment required from human investigators, whose lifespans were insufficient for studying phenomena that developed according to geological or astronomical timescales. These temporal irregularities also provided emergency refuges where individuals could retreat when facing immediate supernatural threats, gaining subjective hours or days to develop solutions while only minutes passed in normal time. The consciousness-affecting properties that characterized specific rooms within the Mystery Shack reflected the accumulated influence of decades of supernatural research and dimensional experimentation, creating environments that enhanced certain types of mental activity while dampening others in ways that could prove either beneficial or dangerous, depending upon individuals' psychological makeup and the specific nature of activities being pursued. The meditation chambers that Stanford had constructed for his deeper research provided enhanced clarity and focus for individuals engaged in theoretical work, while other areas seemed to promote creative inspiration or emotional healing for visitors whose personal circumstances made them receptive to such influences. The artifact storage systems that had been developed throughout the Mystery Shack's history incorporated both mundane security measures and supernatural containment protocols that could prevent dangerous objects from interacting with each other or influencing the broader environment in ways that could threaten the safety of inhabitants or visitors who lacked adequate protection against otherworldly forces. The most dangerous artifacts required individual containment systems that isolated them from normal spacetime, while maintaining accessibility for authorized researchers who possessed the knowledge and equipment necessary to study such materials safely. The information preservation systems that had evolved within the Mystery Shack included both conventional documentation methods and supernatural techniques that could store vast quantities of data in formats that transcended normal limitations of physical media, while remaining accessible to future researchers who might possess different technological capabilities or theoretical frameworks for understanding the phenomena being documented. These systems incorporated safeguards that prevented unauthorized access while ensuring that essential knowledge would remain available for individuals who demonstrated both the competence and ethical qualification necessary to handle such information responsibly. The early warning systems that monitored supernatural activity throughout the Gravity Falls region operated through networks of sensors and detection devices that combined Stanford's original scientific instruments with mystical, monitoring techniques that had been developed by indigenous peoples and refined through decades of practical application, creating comprehensive surveillance capabilities that could identify and classify threats across the full spectrum of otherworldly phenomena, while providing adequate advance notice for implementing appropriate defensive or containment measures. The communication systems that connected the Mystery Shack to supernatural entities and research institutions throughout the world operated according to principles that transcended conventional limitations of distance and dimensional boundaries, while maintaining security protocols that prevented interception or manipulation by hostile forces that sought to exploit such networks for their own purposes. These systems enabled real-time collaboration between researchers working in different locations, while providing access to resources and expertise that would otherwise have been unavailable to investigators operating in isolation. The training facilities that had been established within the Mystery Shack's hidden areas provided controlled environments where individuals could develop the skills and knowledge necessary for safe interaction with supernatural phenomena, while minimizing the risks associated with practical education in subjects that could prove dangerous or deadly for inadequately prepared students. These facilities incorporated both theoretical instruction areas and practical testing environments that could simulate a wide range of otherworldly encounters while maintaining safety margins that protected trainees from permanent harm. The emergency response systems that had been integrated throughout the Mystery Shack structure could activate automatically when sensors detected supernatural threats that exceeded predetermined danger thresholds, implementing protective measures that ranged from simple containment protocols to complete dimensional isolation depending upon the nature and severity of detected phenomena. These systems incorporated both human oversight mechanisms and autonomous response capabilities that could function effectively even when qualified personnel were unavailable to provide direct supervision or intervention. The research archives that had accumulated within the Mystery Shack over multiple decades contained documentation of supernatural phenomena and dimensional theory that represented the most comprehensive collection of such information available anywhere in the world, creating invaluable resources for future investigators, while requiring careful curation and access control to prevent dangerous knowledge from being obtained by individuals who lacked adequate preparation for handling such materials responsibly. The organization and preservation of these archives required ongoing effort from specialists who understood both the scientific value and potential dangers associated with different types of information. The legacy planning systems that SUSE had implemented ensured that the Mystery Shack's essential functions and accumulated knowledge would remain available to future generations, even if current management and research staff became unavailable due to natural succession or supernatural casualties that were always possible risks for individuals who worked with forces that operated beyond normal human comprehension. These systems incorporated both practical succession planning and mystical preservation techniques that could maintain continuity across extended periods while adapting to changing circumstances and evolving understanding of supernatural phenomena. The unexplored territories that existed within and around the Mystery Shack represented ongoing frontiers for investigation and discovery. As the building's complex history and supernatural significance continued to generate new mysteries and reveal previously hidden aspects of its role within the cosmic order that governed relationships between different dimensions, forms of existence. The exploration of these territories would require future generations of researchers who possessed the courage, wisdom, and technical capabilities necessary to venture safely into realms where human knowledge approached its limits, while potentially encountering forces that could reshape understanding of reality itself in ways that current theoretical frameworks could not adequately anticipate or prepare for. The Mystery Shack stands now as it has always stood, a beacon of controlled chaos where the impossible becomes routine, and family bonds prove stronger than cosmic horror, its weathered exterior concealing depths of wonder that continue to unfold like ancient maps revealing new territories to explorers whose courage exceeds their caution. The building itself has transcended its humble origins as a simple research cabin to become something approaching a living entity. Its consciousness, shaped by decades of exposure to forces that operate beyond normal understanding, while its purpose remains fundamentally dedicated to the preservation of knowledge and the protection of those brave enough to seek truth in places where conventional wisdom fears to venture. In its gift shop, genuine artifacts of supernatural encounters sit beside obvious novelties with an ambiguity so carefully maintained that the line between authentic mystery and theatrical performance grows blurrier with each passing season, creating an environment where visitors can choose their own level of engagement with wonders that transcend ordinary comprehension, while ensuring that those who prefer the comfort of skepticism can maintain their protective disbelief without feeling excluded from the experience that draws them to this remarkable corner of the world where magic still walks openly among those wise enough to recognize its presence. The tourists who continue to visit the Mystery Shack arrive with expectations shaped by stories and rumors that only hint at the true scope of marvels that await discovery by minds sufficiently open to accept possibilities that extend beyond the boundaries of conventional education. Their wonder and delight, providing ongoing validation for Seuss's commitment to maintaining the delicate balance between revelation and concealment that has always characterized the facility's relationship with a world that simultaneously craves and fears contact with forces that operate according to principles more ancient and fundamental than human civilization. The seasonal rhythms that govern both tourist visitation and supernatural activity create natural cycles of intensity and rest that allow the Mystery Shack to serve multiple constituencies without compromising the essential secrecy that protects both its visitors and the broader community from knowledge that requires careful preparation and ethical grounding to handle safely, while ensuring that those who genuinely need access to otherworldly resources can obtain them during periods when enhanced supernatural activity creates opportunities for contact and communication that remain unavailable during ordinary times. The local residents of Gravity Falls continue to maintain their traditional relationship with the Mystery Shack as both community institution and protective barrier, understanding through generations of accumulated wisdom that its presence provides essential services that extend far beyond simple tourist entertainment, while requiring the kind of discretion and selective ignorance that have enabled their community to thrive in proximity to forces that have destroyed less prepared settlements throughout the region's long and often tragic history of human contact with supernatural phenomena. The educational programs that operate within the Mystery Shack's hidden chambers continue to train new generations of researchers and investigators whose dedication to advancing human understanding of otherworldly phenomena carries forward the legacy of courage and sacrifice that has defined the facility's history, while adapting traditional methodologies to address challenges that require innovative approaches and fresh perspectives from minds unconstrained by the assumptions and limitations that have characterized previous attempts to comprehend cosmic forces through purely terrestrial frameworks. The research initiatives that continue to flourish under Seuss's careful supervision maintain the highest standards of scientific rigor, while incorporating ethical guidelines that reflect lessons learned from past disasters and tragedies that resulted from insufficient consideration of the moral implications associated with investigating forces whose power transcends normal human comprehension, ensuring that future discoveries will serve the interests of human civilization rather than threatening its survival through uncontrolled release of energies that operate according to principles that few minds can adequately process or responsibly direct. The international network of researchers and institutions that recognize the Mystery Shack as a crucial resource for understanding supernatural phenomena continues to grow as knowledge of its capabilities spreads through carefully managed channels that maintain essential security, while enabling collaboration between individuals and organizations whose combined expertise provides humanity's best hope for developing the theoretical frameworks and practical techniques necessary for safe coexistence with forces that have shaped the cosmos since before the formation of physical matter itself. The technological infrastructure that supports the Mystery Shack's multiple functions continues to evolve through integration of advances in both conventional engineering and dimensional physics that push the boundaries of what becomes possible when human ingenuity combines with cosmic principles to create hybrid systems that serve purposes extending far beyond their original design specifications, while maintaining the reliability and safety margins essential for operations that cannot afford failure when dealing with forces capable of unmaking reality itself. The archival collections that preserve the accumulated knowledge and wisdom gathered through decades of supernatural research represent invaluable resources for future investigators, while requiring ongoing curation and protection from individuals who might seek to exploit such information for purposes that conflict with the ethical principles that have guided the Mystery Shack's operations since its establishment as a sanctuary for knowledge that serves humanity's highest aspirations rather than its basest impulses, for power and domination over forces that demand respect rather than conquest. The protective systems that shield both the Mystery Shack and the broader Gravity Falls community from supernatural threats continue to operate with effectiveness that validates the wisdom of those who designed and implemented them, while adapting automatically to changing conditions and emerging challenges that require responses drawing upon both traditional knowledge and innovative solutions that bridge gaps between ancient wisdom and modern understanding of how cosmic forces interact with human civilization in ways that can prove either beneficial or catastrophic depending upon the wisdom and intentions of those who seek to influence such interactions. The memorial spaces within the Mystery Shack that honor the sacrifices made by multiple generations of the Pines family and their allies serve both commemorative and inspirational purposes, ensuring that future visitors and researchers understand the prices that have been paid for the knowledge and safety that they inherit, while encouraging the kind of courage and dedication that will be required for facing challenges that await discovery in territories that remain unexplored, despite decades of intensive investigation into phenomena that continue to reveal new layers of complexity and significance. The healing spaces that provide refuge and restoration for individuals whose encounters with supernatural forces have exceeded their psychological or physical capacity for processing such experiences continue to offer sanctuary where consciousness can recover from exposure to cosmic realities while benefiting from therapeutic techniques that combine conventional medical practice with mystical healing traditions that address wounds that extend beyond the purely physical realm into dimensions where damage requires spiritual intervention rather than merely technological solutions. The training grounds where future generations of supernatural investigators develop the skills and wisdom necessary for safe interaction with otherworldly phenomena, continue to provide controlled environments where theoretical knowledge can be tested against practical challenges while maintaining safety margins that protect students from permanent harm during educational processes that necessarily involve exposure to forces that could prove dangerous or deadly for individuals who lack adequate preparation or natural resilience for handling contact with cosmic powers. The communication networks that connect the Mystery Shack to supernatural entities throughout the Gravity Falls region and beyond continue to facilitate peaceful coexistence between human civilization and otherworldly intelligence while providing early warning systems that can alert authorities when situations develop that require coordinated response from multiple agencies and organizations whose specialized capabilities enable effective intervention in crises that transcend normal emergency management protocols and require expertise that few institutions possess or can rapidly acquire through conventional training programs. The futures that stretch ahead for the Mystery Shack under continued stewardship by individuals who understand both its history and its potential carry both promise and uncertainty, as new challenges will inevitably emerge that require innovations and adaptations that cannot be fully anticipated based on past experience, while the fundamental mission of preserving knowledge and protecting the innocent remains constant across all possible scenarios that might unfold in a world where the impossible continues to manifest with regularity that challenges every assumption about what constitutes normal reality. Rest now in the knowledge that even in our modern world of science and skepticism, places like Gravity Falls continue to exist in the quiet corners of the map. Small communities where wonder still walks hand in hand with daily life, and where the impossible remains always just one discovery away from revelation. Let your dreams carry you to your own hidden valleys, where mystery and love prove stronger than any darkness the world can conjure, and where the greatest adventures await those brave enough to look beyond the ordinary and embrace the extraordinary that surrounds us all. The mystery continues, the family endures, and the magic never truly ends, for those whose hearts remain open to possibilities that extend beyond the boundaries of conventional understanding, while their courage enables them to face whatever wonders or terrors await discovery in the possibilities. Vast cosmic order that encompasses all existence across dimensions that stretch beyond human comprehension into realms where consciousness itself takes forms that defy description in any language that mortal minds have ever developed, for communicating truths that transcend the limitations of three-dimensional space and linear time.